Welcome to another episode of Into Final Thoughts. Before we jump into it, I want to tell you to check out our official partner of this season of Into Final Space, Cartoon Crave. Cartoon Crave is an incredible network and news source for all things animation, including Final Space. To learn more, check them out on Instagram at cartooncrave_ and at the Cartoon Crave on Twitter. Now, let's get into the episode. All right, it is time for the last regular Into Final Thoughts. If you missed last week's announcements, we will be off for the next 3 weeks as 11 through 13 premiere, and then back with 3 randomly selected special guests with the final 3 episodes of this season of Into Final Space. As always, I'm Gabe Jones, here with the man of the hour.
Olan, what's up?
Yo, welcome back to the show. We're here to chat about episode 10 of season 3 of Final Space. And I'm going to give you a heads up right here and now. I watched this episode way back at the beginning of March, and we're recording here at the end of May. And unfortunately, we weren't able to get another watch in before we had to record. So honestly, I don't remember everything that happened this episode. Forgive me if we miss anything massive. I think we got most of it covered. But in the meantime, let's just get into Final Space. So we kicked off I do remember this one being a massive episode. It was a big action episode. And if I remember correctly, this episode stands as a favorite of yours, right? Right after kind of that 5 area.
Yeah, because I think it's a big one, and it I think the action and the way that it's shown and for our budget, it's like,
oh yeah,
it's such a big episode, and there's actually it looks amazing. I think this one out of a lot of them just you can tell everybody just went really hard on it for whatever reason, I don't know, but it looks great, and it's one of those episodes that feels like a finale,
Yeah.
And so everything after this is almost like the extra credit in a way. I think this is it's a big episode. You feel the stakes. And I think everything hits in a really nice way on this episode.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because it feels very much like a kind of 5, where we saw those like just really stunning visuals. I think that also played a lot into this episode with some of the stuff that we saw. And like you said, I feel like everybody, both at Shadow Machine and Gemfield, just kind of went ham.
Yeah, and a lot of that is Boom Bajillijack's directing.
Yeah,
and, Alan being the supervising director. They just that team really were like so in sync with each other that some of the boards that came out of it were just so epic. And and the greatest like joy is to kind of say, hey, just let them loose, like it's like this is what we want it to be, go have fun, and usually when they bring something back, we're able to give a few notes along the way and try to make it even better, but they just do such a good job right off the bat that you just let them have their fun,
Yeah. You said this one was a bit of a budget constrainer. Did you make Tobias squirm a little bit when as this one went on?
Absolutely. I remember I was in I can't even remember. I was like on like a little vacation or something like that in Palm Springs, and I remember I watched the cut of like the storyboard and I just couldn't stop laughing. I'm like, how are we gonna get this made? Like, how? Like we don't have the budget for that. And the crazy thing about this particular episode, it was like, so we always talk about the pandemic, and I hate to even bring it up because it feels like an excuse in a way, but this is part of where you start seeing like the pandemic actually kind of, in 8, you saw it like emotionally affect us. This is when the financial side really started to take hits. It's because it was we just went so big the entire season,
right?
And you also got to look into all the side effects and all the like cost stuff that went into, on their side in Jamfold and our side in Shadow Machine, people working at home, you got to pay for their internet and stuff like that. So it's like all the budget started to kind of, get smaller and smaller and smaller. And this episode was so big, like that it literally meant that the last 3 episodes, and this is like crazy and absurd, but we had to like resolve story points earlier and almost rewrite. So basically like the last 3 episodes, 11 was like the one that needed the least amount of work because of the way the episode is. 12 needed, we were able to tweak it in such a way that you would never know what he was working on or what they're like working on or whatever it is, what the element that's in there, that it was something else. Yeah. And then the last episode is the episode that probably took the biggest rewrite because, we always try to go really big on the last episode. And we had this just epic action sequence. And like, it was just nuts. It was nuts. We had all these Invictus zombies. And then the crazy thing is, I've done the show for, almost 5 years now. And you'll always be surprised what is the economic side of things and what's the most expensive thing to do in animation. Yeah. And every single time we're like, can we do this? Because is this going to cost more? Because that's kind of what we had to do with the finale was like, how do we make a really awesome finale without breaking the bank, Right. And so we just kind of went more on the emotional side with it. And, unfortunately, we had to say, goodbye to a lot of like things in there that would kind of put the budget over top. But it's still a great finale. It's still those last 3 episodes are really good. You wouldn't even notice there was changes, I think. And I think the plus side with this one is we were able to execute everything that we wanted to do in this episode visually and story wise. And it's cool. But because of this episode, you have 3 episodes that were like, that we had to kind of be more conservative on. And it always amuses me with the when you find out what's the animation, what's the big pricey stuff and what's not, because it's like you would never guess it. You would be like, is this expensive? Because I don't think it is. And they're like, yeah, that's actually really pricey to do. And they're like, oh wow, okay, I didn't even imagine that. And then they're like, but if you do this would actually be cheaper. And they're like, how is that cheaper? Like how, like, you literally, your brain is just so boggled with how, so we always, had to kind of ask with those last 3 episodes to make sure that we weren't kind of going over budget because the goal was to kind of finish it, and get across the finish line and, not have to kind of be a show that asked for more money because there was no way we were getting it,
Yeah. Yeah, I like how you mentioned this is kind of a semi-finale feeling episode. And I think, these last 2 seasons, with Chapter 10, 6 Key, those were both massive, really big episodes that I think this kind of carries that feeling to it. And yeah. It's
I think that the last, I want to say like 5 minutes of this episode is just so epic and awesome. And it looks so beautiful. And, I was just kind of just watching the pre-mix of the finale and it all looks so good. And, even with the constraints and everything like that, you really feel like this episode, you're going to get your action, so you get plenty
you
of
get it somewhere. Yeah.
And, when you watch 9 and 10 together, I just feel like these two just are such a left hand, right hand, they just go so well together. But I think it's, it all feels like one kind of big continuation, one big movie. And I would love for somebody just to like, after it's all done, just watch it from 1 to 13 of season 3 and see how they feel and how it plays. Cause I want to do that. You know? And I haven't been able to do that because we're still working on the show. Like we can't, like probably by Monday, if anybody's still working on Final Space, which I think everybody's at, pretty much off, like everybody's done. So I think we have like one person doing QC and that's it. And I wonder how I can get this last episode. Probably no way I can actually get it until it actually airs. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, a lot of big things this episode. Gonna jump into some of the bigger story points. I want to kick it off with our discovery of the Titan in the Earth, which was crazy. And the Lord Commander, we got this kind of beating by Invictus, and we can obviously tell now that his priorities have shifted if they're ever in any loyalty to Invictus at all. Can we talk about this kind of shift and finally getting around like another nice loop around to way back in season 1 where he wanted to become a Titan, where he is now mindset wise?
Yeah, I mean, I think that was part of that connective tissue to season 1. At the end, the reason why he did all the events in season 1 was to become more powerful, and
right.
We love this idea of such a small villain wanting to be this massive thing and failing. Like everybody ended up failing at the end of that episode.
Yeah.
And then in this, he finally gets it. Finally gets finally gets the thing that he's always wanted, and it comes at a massive price, and I think the cool thing, I think, with, even the Titan at the center of the planet, we had that idea actually in season 1.
Oh.
And at the time we were trying to put it in season 2, because we were in the script writing process, and then, it was like we had such a weird order too. At the time we had like 16 scripts. Yeah. And then they were like, that's a weird number. Why did we do 16 scripts? and then they made it like 13 episodes, and we were trying to figure out how to do that. And at the end of that season, you're going to find out that there was a Titan at the end of the center of the Earth. And we always loved that idea of just that, it's so strange, it's like, it's one of those things that we just kind of always kept since season 1. And we're like, yeah, we want to do it at some point. How do we do it? And how do we execute it? And this one felt like it was the opportune time to do it. And it was cool to kind of like thread little, Easter eggs kind of throughout the season, and see, episode 2, you kind of see, the planet like shaking and stuff like that. And it's just really, really kind of cool to plant those like little Easter eggs.
Yeah.
If you go back and rewatch, you're like, oh crap, that's what that was. That's why there was seismic activity and stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, it was really neat. Like you said, that connective tissue, and that's something we talked about all season, is, connecting this season back to the first 2 and kind of paying homage to the story points that have come before. Just it keeps that flow going really, really well. And I'll circle back to the Lord Commander Titan thing, because I think that'll be a good way to wrap this episode. But want to switch over to our team squad for a little bit. They were splitting for this episode, so I want to hit the avocado trail first. So this is very personal for him. Lord Commander kind of, used him, that we found out in the Mintraxian this season, and killed him at one point way back in chapter 6. And so it's like he's got to go after him. So what were your thoughts on Avocado at this point, and what were your thoughts on Coty's performance this episode?
Yeah, Coty did great, and he's just getting better and better and better. And I think if you go back to season 1, you'll see the growth in that performance. Yeah. And I think he's getting more comfortable with the character and more comfortable in his performances. And and I think what this episode it was cool to kind of, I love the kind of battle that these two have. It's one of where they kind of both hate each other, and they're kind of, I don't see, in my eyes, I don't see anybody else trying to kill Lord Commander other than Avocado or Little Cato, because he's just done so much damage to that family. And Gary, I feel like it's more, kind of Invictus and trying to, save the universe along with Quinn. But the Lord Commander has such a personal connection to Avocado and Little Cato, So I think it was cool to kind of, in this episode, be like, what, if he's going after this thing, now's my chance to kind of finish it, and he tries, it's like, and that's the thing, is this guy just always gets away at the last second. And I think that's kind of the joy of writing a villain like this, is he just always slips through your fingers,
Right. And in this case, in like the most monumentally horrible way, to miss that opportunity. But yeah, and then on the other side, we have this is probably one of my favorite Gary Quinn kind of spotlights this season. Kind of fighting alongside each other and supporting each other in the quest to start up the Kevin net. What were your thoughts and kind of working to write and going into these scenes with the two of them, and then bringing Bolo in to fight alongside them?
Yeah, it was interesting, because this is a script that we kind of gave Ben to write.
Gotcha.
And he had a really kind of, interesting thing to kind of do a little nod back to episode 9, season 1, where they go on that first date and the world's kind of crumbled,
Yeah.
And there was a lot of like that in there, but the episode was so massive. Like when we got the storyboards in, I think it was like 7 minutes over.
Oh gosh.
And it was like 28 minutes. And and the funny thing is, that's probably what a Final Space episode probably should run, know?
Yeah.
But I think what we had to do was kind of like, get to the core, the nucleus of what what they were trying to say and their kind of story. But yeah, I mean, it's always so hard to trim stuff, like that, because it's stuff that we really want the spotlight. And you still get some nice moments,
Yeah. That's like I said, I think it's the time that they spend together, I think is meaningful. It's memorable for the two of them. Especially now we have the kind of flipped coin of Gary with the Final Space poisoning, and that kind of, puts a time on things, as like it did with Quinn at the beginning of the season. And yeah, I think it was a lot of fun to watch. It was really cool to see, Bolo come down and be their size.
Yeah.
And what was this thing? It's been so long. I don't remember what state they ended up in to go start the Kevin net. There's some really good comedic moments in this episode as well, though.
Yeah, there's definitely some fun to be had in this, it's so post-apocalyptic.
Yeah.
There's definitely still a couple of jokes along the way,
Yeah.
But you're definitely starting to see that this is like, it's very action driven.
Yeah.
A lot more emotion. But I think if you watch it as like that 2-parter, you get your fun.
Oh yeah.
And then this one is like, you get the kind of conclusion to that 2-parter feel.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, that connective tissue that we talked about, even I think plays into this season. We get the bringing back of the zombie Garys, which we've seen, kind of spotted throughout. And we talked about them way back at the beginning of the episode. But what's it like now? As we're coming to this end, we're trying to bring everybody together. So we've got Lord Commander, Invictus in the kind of form of Gary zombies and the Team Squad. What was it like, trying to push these all to the conclusion of the season?
Yeah, I think this is the funny thing is the Gary zombies is as much as we love them, that was probably one of the most taxing things on the budget. And this episode we got to do a little bit of it. I mean, you'll see in an upcoming episode a pretty big episode with them, and I think this is kind of just reminding the audience that, hey, they're still there, for the upcoming episode. It's like, it's, you got to kind of always plant those little connective tissue beats, and it's always kind of fun to see them. And, it's definitely just kind of a nuisance out there, and I don't know.
Yeah, I remember watching, it may have been the BTS for the first episode or one of the other ones with Jen Wolf talking about going into the design on those, and she said she got asked to do like 5 and ended up doing like a dozen or so. They're really interesting, and because they're all diverse and different. So again, just playing back to the skill of the team over there at Shadow Machine. He killed it this season for sure.
Yeah, they did a great job on him, and it's cool to see whenever somebody just kind of takes a scene and they just run with it, and it comes back, and you're like, why did they go extra hard on that scene? And I'm always surprised, but it's always a joy to see a certain shot, and you're like, man, somebody really connected with that.
Yeah.
They went so hard on it, and it looks hand drawn, like it's kind of like, it's always like, opening up a gift on Christmas morning,
Yeah. Cause everyone there just seems so dedicated to what they're doing, and, kind of putting the blood, sweat, and tears into it. When you're talking to these crew members, they love the show as much as the fans do.
Yeah.
But yeah. And as we kind of move towards near the end of this episode, we kind of hinted way back when that, we were going to have some people that weren't going to make it out. And of course we lost Kevin Van Newton this episode. So what were your thoughts closing out this chapter with the creator of the Kevins?
Yeah. As much as Kevin Van Newton is super fun, I feel like his story was kind of complete. He got to see his life's work launched, he got to finally do it. And he was Earth's most visionary roboticist, and he took pride in that. There was a reason why he stayed on Earth. He didn't want to go. He didn't want to leave his home. That was it. And he did that to the better end. You never really got a sense that he was ever going to leave.
Right.
It was always something like, yeah, I'll help you leave, and I'll help you get a ship. But it was never like, yeah, I'm going to go. He was like, you guys need to get out of here. Like he never was going to leave. And I think it's bittersweet, but it is something kind of interesting and cool to see a character that's so committed to staying home, Yeah.
We get, going back to our team heroes. I think we get a hero out of Kevin Van Newton, someone who actually succeeded and helped better the world in some way, and the universe in some way, with both, the transdimensional bridge and the Kevin Net. He's trying to do something for good and succeeded, in one fashion. But yeah, and then finally, wow, the way this episode ended, of course, with our Lord Commander Titan, it's just massively cool to see. Like you said, that last 5 minutes of that episode, it's just wow. So yeah, what do we have in store next week with what we saw there?
Yeah, you're actually going to kind of see something kind of interesting, and it's because this episode was so massive. You're going to see a little bit of a sliver that was supposed to be at the end of episode 10, but we ended up having to move it to the top of episode 11.
Gotcha.
And it's going to be a shock. But what I will say is that episode has so many cool twists and reveals, and it's surprisingly emotional towards the end. Like, you're gonna get a lot of really cool answers, I think, in that episode. And 12 and 13 just kind of get pretty crazy. So I think it's definitely a fun ride from here on out. And it's you got the big action pieces. Now get ready for some smaller, not necessarily less actiony, but just kind of smaller, more emotional driven kind of stories.
I'm really excited for more tears this season. Thanks, Olan. but yeah, I think that's gonna do it for us. It's a short and sweet episode. And if I missed something, rewinded. This is the intro again. I have not seen this episode in ages. If I missed something that you just absolutely loved from the episode, I'm sure if you have questions, Olan would be happy to answer on Twitter. Yeah. But once again, we will not have an episode next week or the 2 weeks after that. We'll be on break until the finale hits, and I'm not exactly sure when we'll release the last 3, but we'll be doing some sort of special release for those episodes of Into Final Thoughts. But instead of an episode next week, make sure you're following the socials and expect a video from me on how you can enter what we're calling Into Final Lingering Thoughts and appear on one of the last 3 episodes of this season and talk to good old Olan here. But yeah, while we're wrapping up, like and subscribe on YouTube, drop 5 stars on Apple, and wherever you're listening, go follow us. Follow Into Final Space at Olan Rogers and at Gabriel W. Jones on your social platforms. And stay tuned for these last 3 episodes. It's going to be really, really fun. Really excited to have fans back on the podcast. It's always a really good time to have you guys on here. But as always, thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time on Into Final Space. Thanks, guys.
Peace.